Tonight, we have a new installment of 360 series All Over the Map with John King. With the Iowa caucuses about a month away, he went back to the state to revisit with Republican voters that he spoke with months ago. Support for the former president obviously strong in the state. In the latest NBC News Des Moines Register Mediacom Iowa poll, he's at 51%. Governor Ron DeSantis at 19%. Nikki Haley at 16%. DeSantis has gained 3 points since October. Haley is unchanged. Given that, do the voters that John spoke with still support the former president? John, what did you find out?
Anderson, the president's support is strong. You see it, you feel it, you hear it. He's above 50% in that Iowa poll, the latest one, which is significant. First time he's been above 50%. But about half of the party still would prefer someone other than Trump. And this is anecdotal reporting. It's not data. It's not science. But in the voter group we've been following for 5 months now, we do notice, I would say, a shift toward Haley among Republican women. Now, can she build on it? They know they have 32 days to try to pull off a surprise.
Low rolling hills of southwest Iowa, Shannon Ebersol's happy place.
I'll just sit out here with my cows and take a breath, and everything goes back to the way that it should be.
A family cattle farmer for 25 years, a two-time Donald Trump voter.
I love what he did for small businesses. I love what he did for agriculture. I wish he could have done it a little bit quieter.
The loud part is why Ebersol is shopping.
Because he wasn't as respectful as I think our president should be. Because he didn't bring us together.
Shopping for a conservative who doesn't scare her liberal friends.
I would lean towards Haley. I think that in the face of people calling names, in the face of people yelling and screaming in front of her, she held her composure. I think that she has the demeanor and the life experience that is more connected to actual Americans.
Trump's support is deep here, especially in rural counties like Ringgold. But if there is to be an Iowa surprise, Republican women will power it. This is Priscilla Forsyth making Christmas crafts with friends in Sioux City. 5 months ago, when we first spoke, she was leading Vivek Ramaswamy.
I really got the feeling he's brilliant. He's got energy. He's young.
Now she urges friends to vote Haley.
Usually, to me, the debates don't make a big difference, but they kind of did this time.
Forsyth caucused for Trump when he won Sioux City back in 2016. Now she sees something else taking shape.
I think they're underestimating the people who don't want the chaos anymore.
There's a lot of that in the Des Moines suburbs.
We want to turn a chapter. We want to go to something new.
Betsy Sarcone hopes Iowa uses its first-in-the-nation vote to elevate one strong Trump alternative. This is what she told us back in August.
I do find I am pulled towards DeSantis.
And this is now.
I am likely a Nikki Haley caucuser.
Sarcone says her brother and parents are also leaning Haley, but she's not final just yet.
If people were going to consolidate, I would go with DeSantis. That's not what I'm seeing so far. These suburbs out here, you're likely going to see a lot of, it's going to be DeSantis-Haley.
But if it's DeSantis-Haley, Trump wins, doesn't he?
He does. I mean, that's the question, right? How do you get people to consolidate?
Jocelyn Taylor is another mom and entrepreneur who hopes the suburbs send a message.
I see Nikki Haley helping us identify back with what our culture is, what our vision is, and what our mission is as a united states, not a divided states.
But as Taylor tries to recruit friends, there's a lesson about Trump's resilience.
And they say, oh, I really like Nikki Haley, or I really like Ron DeSantis. But when it comes down to the voting and the primary, I'll probably just vote for Trump because he's going to get it anyways. And that just really frustrated me. The influence of the louder voices is having an impact on people.
This is Chris Mudd's big change. Midwest Solar is growing and needed a new office. Same candidate, though. Same confidence.
You know, you got to have thick skin to be for Trump today. And so I think those people that say they're for him are going to show up.
When you hear DeSantis say, you know, we got to stop losing, or Haley say, no drama, no chaos, time for a new generation of leadership, you say?
They're 30, 35, 40 points behind Trump. I would say that they're the chaos and that they should stand down and support Trump.
Mudd doesn't care about polls showing Haley runs stronger against President Biden. Doesn't care Trump could be both the Republican nominee and a convicted felon by summer.
I think Trump has been pushed into a corner. I think he's got lots of targets on him, and I think he's doing a great job of deflecting every one of them.
Doesn't see January 6th as disqualifying. To the contrary.
You know, why didn't Nancy Pelosi have the National Guard there?
It's a separate question, though, isn't it?
No,
that's
it's
that's
not.
a legitimate question. It's a legitimate question. But just because there weren't enough cops there, does that give people the right to blow through those barricades, to beat those, in some cases, beat those officers?
No, it doesn't. But the people that were there were negligent from stopping it from happening. They wanted it to happen because they wanted Trump to not be eligible to run again. I think it was set up to end Trump.
There is zero evidence to support that. And it is talk like that that is a big reason Shannon Ebersole says enough.
Inflammatory acts did not happen by President Trump, but he inflamed a lot of people to do a lot of crazy things that I don't think that's really who we are.
The cows are still here because the freeze is late, but they will soon have to move. And Ebersole knows that means time is running short for Republicans like her who hope Iowa sends a message. It is time to move on.
So, John, what should people look for in the caucuses?
Who votes and where they vote, Anderson. The who part is important. I just want to show you the Iowa caucus electorate in 2016. Remember, Ted Cruz won Iowa in 2016. Donald Trump won New Hampshire, and the rest is history. But Donald Trump came in second in Iowa. Essentially, that's where he proved he had appeal among Republican voters. This was the electorate then. More than half the electorate was men in 2016. If more than half of the electorate on January 15th is men, Donald Trump is likely to win and win big. You have to see what's the composition of the electorate. Haley's only chance is women, is if women finally decide that, and you hear it when you're on the ground there, they don't like the toxic tone, they want to move on. Even some who voted for Trump twice and say they would probably vote for him against Biden in November, they just want to move on. So that's the who, and then it's the where. If you just look since 2016, this is the 2020 election map. Trump won Iowa quite easily. But since 2016, there's been massive growth here, especially in Des Moines and the suburbs around it. Now, they're not all Republicans, but when you're there, I've been doing this is my 10th presidential campaign. When I go there now, it is a very different place from when you went there even 4 or 8, but it's particularly when you went there 30 years ago. That's the fastest growing part of the population. And we know from 2018 and 2020, the suburbs are Trump's kryptonite. Do enough people turn out in the suburbs, or do Republicans come out to vote against Donald Trump? And it's interesting, again, this is anecdotal reporting, but that farm was down here, a tiny county. Priscilla Forsyth is out here, a Republican county. Is there a movement? Is it enough? Or is it just, Haley does better, but not good enough?
That farm, that cattle ranch, was beautiful.
It's gorgeous.
I wanna
It is
live
gorgeous
there.
land down there.
Yeah, John King, thank you. And thanks to everybody participating in that. Just